Okay, good morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share my work. What I'm presenting is a study that is joint work with Stefania Galvan and Mikhail Shapor, and we did it within the framework of the Gender Lab from the IDB. So what the objective of this project was to understand the gender differences in the behavior of the Uruguayan formal labor market during COVID-19 and the recuperation, and to evaluate the role of the unemployment insurance program in this context as an instrument for employment protection. So what we do in the project, using social administrative data on labor markets, we have the labor histories from the workers, and we also have the database of all the unemployment insurance beneficiaries in Uruguay. What we do is we analyze the differences in the probabilities of losing formal employment, entering the unemployment insurance, and the magnitude of the income losses. And we also compare labor market flows before and after the pandemic, and we evaluate the unemployment insurance using the eligibility rule to run a regression discontinuity exercise. But what I'm presenting here is only the part that is marked in red, the gender differences in the probabilities of losing employment and entering the program due to the time assigned to the presentations. So just a brief, a quick summary of the literature related to our paper. The early studies about the effects of the pandemic on the labor market and the gender differences of these effects marked larger losses for women during the pandemic, basically because women were concentrated in service industries, and also this was reinforced by the higher childcare burden due to the shock to the schools closure. So this led to the naming the recession as a she-session, which affected more women. But these were like the earlier studies. Then we have a second wave of studies that looked that when women even if women took over most of the childcare burden, the effects on paid work were not so different between men and women. And in any case, if there was a higher effect for women, it was concentrated in the first during the pandemic, but then it tended to be reversed. And there is evidence for Spain, Italy, for the UK, and also for the US. I go quickly through this, but it's kind of the findings of these studies. For Latin America, we did not have evidence based on administrative records. Basically, the evidence is based on household surveys or phone surveys that were carried on during the pandemic, and they tend to conclude that women face more adverse conditions during the crisis, and even after 1 year after the crisis. And we have evidence of strong negative effects for Brazil, Chile, Dominican Republic, and Mexico. So our contribution here is to give novel evidence for the regional context based on a longer time span. So we have data from the pre-COVID period until October 2022, and to analyze the patterns of recovery. Very briefly, also the context of COVID-19 in Uruguay. Uruguay have stay-at-home recommendations, and 2 peaks of infections that you can see here to the left of the screen. You have in blue is the new cases. The first peak is in March 2020, and the last one starts in December 2021, and the gray lines, the blue lines are the new cases, and the gray lines are the deaths. So in the first, we have very low cases and very high deaths because it's before vaccination, and then we have a lot of people infected, but with low incidence of death. And what is also very important is that the stringency index that marks the movement of the population was very high during the first peak. So even if there were no contagions in Uruguay, the stay-at-home recommendation was respected by the population, and so there we have the main effects. I will skip that one and just give you some background about the unemployment insurance program in Uruguay. It is a long traditional program that started many decades ago, and it covers private salary workers, and the workers can go into the unemployment insurance due to 3 reasons. Job loss, that is being fired, it's a permanent layoff, but it had the possibility of entering into the unemployment insurance because of job suspension. So this existed before the crisis in Uruguay. It's basically you can enter the program because of the total suspensions of activities for a period of 4 months. And this is also named as temporary layoff, and the possibility of job reduction, that is when you enter the program because the days of work in the week or the hours of work are reduced for at least 25%. So what the Uruguayan government did is basically 1/3 of all the financial resources allocated to the COVID-19 policies were allocated to an unemployment insurance program. So, for example, just to compare, the social assistance measures that include the pre-existing cash transfers and the new cash transfers that were created, they took 18% of the total resources. So the unemployment was the big response. It's a response for formal workers. It's important that in Uruguay the rate of informality is 25%, so it's a special case within the Latin American context, because we have informality but not as extended as in other countries, and also we already had this program. So there you can, just to show you what happened in the first quarter of 2020, this is the new beneficiaries to the unemployment, the people who entered the unemployment program. This is the peaks, and you see there the 3 modalities, and basically the violet one is the suspension. So it's most people enter through the activation of the suspension modality. This was easy. This is explained because the requirements were easier just to facilitate the access. So the government just make easier requirements to people so that workers could enter the program. As I said, we have administrative records of work histories and the unemployment insurance beneficiaries covering from January 2019 to October 22. And we also have the database from the unemployment insurance beneficiaries with the date of entrance to the programs, the date of exit, and the monthly subsidy. And we can also combine that with the registers, the registers of the births in Uruguay. All the births are registered, and we can detect within our data those workers who are mothers or fathers of children aged 6 or younger, because of the availability of the birth database. So we can capture who are the workers who have children at home, children aged 6 or less at home. The methodology is very standard. What we do is we run this regression with the dependent variables can take 4 outcomes: lose informal employment, enter into the unemployment insurance program, the wages, and another variable, which is wages plus the unemployment benefits, just to look at the smoothing effect of the unemployment insurance. We can control for age, sector of activity, firm, and size. And there, what we have is an indicative. The first indicative variable is the phases of the COVID-19. Use 4 phases. I will show that later. Then we have a binary variable indicated gender. Then we have the interaction, and then the control variable. So what we have here is what we are going to analyze is I will show is the coefficient of the interaction variable to show the differential effect of the COVID-19 on women, for women. This is just the coefficient of the phases. We see a loss of employment in the first phase and in the second. Then the third phase, so this is, there you have the phases. This is March to June 2020, when we have the shock in employment. Then in the second, to July to November, we also have a negative impact on employment. In the third phase, we did not. And the last year, October 2021, October 2022, it's like a recovery phase. A lot of workers enter into the unemployment insurance. That is the probability of entering the unemployment insurance in the two first phases. an important shock on wages, an important decline on wages in the first two phases. And if you compare, when we consider wages plus unemployment benefits, this decline is like almost half of the decline of wages disappears when you consider the unemployment insurance. So there was a very important role of the program in smoothing the decline of wages. And here we have the effects for the differential effect for women. So what I'm presenting here is the coefficient on the interaction between the phase and the female variable. We have for each phase 2 bars. One is only individual controls, and the other one is when we add the sectoral controls to see the sectoral nature of this crisis. And we see that the coefficient, the loss of employment is significantly higher for women during the 2 periods. So this is the differential effect for women in the first 3 periods. And also, and this is rather surprising, the probability of entering into the unemployment insurance once you are out of the formal labor force is considerably higher for women. So somehow the unemployment insurance received a lot of women. Even this is contrary of the historical pattern of the unemployment insurance, with the probability of entering is higher for men. In this case, it was different. Here we have the decline in wages during the first 3 periods. In all cases, the effects are smaller when we control for sector of activity and firm size. And there we have the smoothing effects of the unemployment insurance benefit. And I will skip this one, which are heterogeneous effects, and just concentrate here. We have heterogeneous effect by the wages. We use third size of wages, and there, I'm just telling you, I didn't show the graph. What we see is that the effects are concentrated on in the middle of the employment protection is for the middle of the formal workers. So it's not for the poorer ones, from the middle. But what I want to show here is that here we have the effect on employment and on formal on the probability of entering the employment insurance for women. The differential effect for women who are childless or for mothers, and we see that the effect is high. I mean, women with children have the higher probability of losing the formal employment, but they also have a much higher probability of entering the employment insurance. So what we do not know here if this is kind of an agreement within the firm, and the employer decides to send women into the unemployment insurance. We also have to keep in mind that the schools were closed, so the children were at home, but we have a differential effect for women of our program. So I leave it here because of the time constraints, but I am happy to answer questions later. Thank you.